on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Kevin Jackwitz. This is the Kaged Review, and this is going to be my review for Avengers: Age of Ultron. Forgive me if I'm a little groggy. I just woke up after a really long sleep from, like 2 days of working my butt off. So, if I'm a little groggy, just, bear with me. Directed by Joss Whedon, you have all the returning characters. You have Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Iron Man. Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, Captain America. Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner the Hulk, Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, Jeremy Renner as Cliff Barton, Hawkeye. You also have smaller roles from Don Cheadle as James Rhodes or War Machine, and Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson Falcon. And so you set the stage kind of picking up right where the Winter Soldier's mid-credit scene left off. You've got Hydra, they're experimenting with Loki's staff, the Mind Stone, and they wound up creating Pietro Maximoff, Quicksilver, who is played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Elizabeth Olsen, who plays Wanda Maximoff, his sister, the Scarlet Witch. And so S.H.I.E.L.D. has been taken over by Hydra. Hydra's doing experimentation. Now they're creating enhanced people. And so the Avengers find this facility. They go and infiltrate it. They go and collect the staff. And during that big fight, you're introduced to Quicksilver especially. You see him. Now, this is the same Quicksilver that you see in the X-Men. These are the same two kids that are Magneto's kids. So these are technically the first two X-Men that you get in the Avengers series. They don't right off tell you that they're the X-Men or that they're part of that, family, but they are. And so they killed off the sister in the X-Men movies, and they wind up killing off Quicksilver here. So they are left with, of course, Scarlet Witch, which we know becomes a big integral part of the Avengers movies later. So while they have the staff, while the Avengers have the staff, Tony Stark wants to study it and wants to see what he can do with it. And of course, he doesn't bother telling his teammates that his actual agenda is trying to build a shield around the world, somehow interfacing the technology from the staff with Jarvis and, making the security something. And it just goes wrong. Ultron becomes self-aware and decides that Tony Stark's version of peace in our time, which is a phrase that he says, actually has to be killing off all the people on the planet, because how else are you going to find peace? People are just, that way. They find a reason to hate somebody. Stephen King said, put two people in a room for longer than 10 minutes, and one of them will find a reason to kill the other one. And it's kind of the way people are, unfortunately. So there is kind of a reason behind what Ultron is doing, as messed up as it is. And so Ultron recruits both Maximoff kids because they have their own issues with Tony Stark. And so Scarlet Witch has the ability to kind of get in people's minds and make them see things and, visions and whatever. And so there's a fight scene where they wind up, for the most part, all getting mind tricked by Wanda Maximoff, and it turns into some really good stuff. And so what happens is they find out that this guy, Ulysses Klaue, played by Anthony Serkis, who does a great job throughout the whole Marvel series as Klaue, is selling vibranium. And so that's where Ultron goes, and that's where Iron Man and the crew meet up with him. And so there's this big fight. Scarlet Witch mind fucks just about everybody there except for like Cliff Barton. She goes to trick his mind, and he grabs an electronic arrow and just like sticks it on her forehead. Great line. He says, I've already had that, wasn't a fan. So it was a really cool moment. But yeah, she winds up mind tricking Bruce Banner, who freaks out, turns into the Hulk, and the Hulk is just now on a rampage in this small town. And so they keep talking about Veronica as a protective system against the Hulk. And so they call in Veronica, and it turns out to be the Hulkbuster suit. And there's this absolutely amazing fight between the Hulk and Iron Man. Iron Man obviously trying to get the Hulk out of town, away from people. Doesn't really work out the way he wants it to, though. Big fight that just goes all over the place. And eventually, Bruce Banner starts kind of coming to. He's still the Hulk, but he looks around, he sees all the destruction, and then he just kind of takes off. So really cool there. Kind of a subplot to that was Thor, when he was mind tricked, winds up seeing a lot of visions of Heimdall saying, "You've killed us all." He gets visions of the Infinity Stones, but he also gets visions of Ragnarok. So you're getting things leading up to Thor Ragnarok, which I thought was really, really cool. You're getting things that kind of, go from movies in the past leading towards movies they're doing in the future. Sometimes it did make it a little bit jumbled, but still very cool that they were able to do that and pull it off, I think, as good as it could have been pulled off. So Ultron goes to Sokovia. It's this town in Europe where he decides he is going to create this master plan to kill the Avengers and then destroy the planet. The Avengers don't know exactly what his plan is yet, but you go to Sokovia, there's this big speech about what he's going to do, and then you find out he's got these jetpacks or whatever you want to call them that are going to lift up the entire city of Sokovia, held together by this magnetic force, and then he's just going to drop an entire city from high enough to where it would essentially be a meteor hitting the Earth, and it would destroy everything. And so you're like, okay, well, we got to fix that. He also, Ultron, wants to make a human body for himself, made of actual tissue. And so he enlists Dr. Helen Cho, played by Claudia Kim, who was just a cute actress. God, she was cute. And so he recruits her to help him transfer his consciousness into this living tissue being. When he starts to transfer his consciousness, Wanda Maximoff sees his actual plan to destroy the Earth. And so they kind of stop him from transferring his consciousness. And they see what's happening, and they don't want to be a part of it anymore. And so they realize that they have to stop Ultron no matter what. Ultron then takes this body in this semi-trailer, and he's going to try to connect his consciousness to it again while traveling to where he's going in Sokovia. The Avengers head him off. He has to stop again. And there's a big fight scene where a couple of these androids pick up this trailer and they're flying it literally across the sky into Sokovia. That was pretty cool. And then you get the big final showdown, which is, of course, a bunch of Ultron-like robots, and I mean a bunch of them that are facing off against the Avengers. And, Ultron is like all these robots are one consciousness. It's very hybrid in that way. It's very Hive in that way. And so it was really, really a cool idea to do that. So before you get that final face-off, though, the Avengers get this tissue body, and Tony Stark decides that, you know what, we can do this right this time, because Jarvis, who we thought was destroyed by Ultron, has been hiding and kind of keeping Ultron from taking over the internet. And so they want to put Jarvis's consciousness into this being. And So they start to do that, him and Bruce Banner, and then of course Captain America and a couple others show up, and they're just not with that. It was a big fight scene. And Wanda Maximoff and Quicksilver are both with him, and they decide to just go ahead and tear apart the equipment that Tony Stark was using. Well, Thor shows up out of nowhere, uses his electricity to go ahead and create this being, and up pops Vision, which is a very cool character, and they made him very cool right away. Of course, he's got the same, dialect as Jarvis does, and so it was very cool to have this super powerful being pop out. He's got the Jarvis voice, and then they're trying to decide whether, what they created was good or bad, and he's like, I don't know if I'm good or bad, I just know that we have to stop Ultron. So while we're talking, let's get busy. And he actually picks up Thor's hammer and hands it to Thor. And earlier in the movie, there was this big scene where they were at this celebration for finding the staff in the first place, and they were having this competition of who could pick up Thor's hammer, and of course nobody could. So the fact that Vision was able to pick up Thor's hammer and proves himself worthy was very good, and it automatically sold Thor. It was like, all right, this is okay. So then you have the big face-off, which really turns into Ultron versus Vision. And I really like that. I really, really did like that. It's like polar opposites, like the evil and the good version facing off against each other. And it really worked for me. Really did. I really loved it. So there were a couple of things during this movie that I really, really appreciated. One was you get a look at Cliff Barton's life outside of his job. And he decides that they need a safe place to go, so he takes them to his house, where you meet his wife, Laura Barton, played by Linda Cardinelli. Fine job she did there. I thought it was really good. And you get to meet his kids, and this is kind of where the Avengers split apart for a little bit. They come to his place. This is where Thor decides he needs to go and check out what happened in his vision. Captain America was dealing with, his visions. And then, little things they did here. Obviously, you're going to have the friction between Captain America and Iron Man because of what Tony Stark did. And there was this great thing where Tony Stark was trying to explain his reasons for creating Ultron. And he says he's trying to stop the war before it starts. And then Captain America was cutting logs, and he just grabs a log and rips it in half. And he's like, every time somebody tries to stop a war before it starts, innocent people die. Every time. And I thought that was really good. Not just that they were kind of showing off his strength there, but the line delivered was really, really great. So I really loved that. I also really loved the fact that they went into Black Widow's history, and it shows kind of how they create the Black Widows and the training they go through and what they have to endure, and the operation that kind of sterilizes them from having kids. So they can't have to worry about a kid maybe coming before a job for the Black Widows. And I really thought that they just had some really great touches there that give you some insight into who Natasha Romanoff is now. And I thought it was phenomenal. I really loved that. You have a couple other smaller roles from Stellan Skarsgård as Erik Selvig and Idris Elba as Heimdall. And those were kind of in Thor's vision. Thor goes to find Stellan Skarsgård, Erik Selvig. And he goes to this place. It was like this big pool that's supposed to give him these, ability to look deeper into his visions. And obviously Heimdall was in his visions. Those were the major things that happened. And it was highly, highly entertaining. This was one of the best movies that they've made yet. I don't think it was as good as the first Avengers. I don't. I thought it was very, very good and honestly very close. I thought it was a close second, but not as good as the Avengers. It was just a little bit of pacing, and like I said, throwing things in that kind of led to movies that haven't happened yet. Felt a little bit disjointed at times. But if that's my biggest complaint about the movie, that they did really good. And they did. It was an amazing movie. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. We'll say 9 out of 10. It was that good. Definitely enjoyed myself. It is an absolute thrill ride. The special effects looked amazing. They look seamless. What more could you want? So, ladies and gentlemen, that's where I'm at with Avengers Age of Ultron. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. My name is Kevin Jackowitz, Kaged Nation. Out.